Oh, my.
At this time, prosecution would like to call Officer Larry Foster. Please state your name for the court.
My name is Ryan Foster.
And Mr. Foster, what do you do for a living?
Well, currently I'm a patrol officer with the Midland Center Police Department.
And what are your qualifications?
Well, I got my degree in professional engineering in 1999 from Georgia Tech, and that's what makes me qualified to be part of the fatal crash team that's part of Midland Center Police Department. And I also took a 22-week course with the police department to become a patrol officer.
And how long have you been a patrol officer?
My experience is around 10 years now.
Where were you on September 24th?
Well, I was actually patrolling the road between Canyon and Chambers in the evening to see if any drivers coming through.
Do drivers come through there often?
On the weekends, yes, especially coming back from bars and stuff, going back home.
Objection, speculation. How do you know they're going home? Couldn't they be going to another bar, Officer Foster? I'm sorry, I can't.
You can still object, though.
This is Officer Foster is an experienced police officer. He sees this on a regular basis. He knows where people are heading on, usually on those drinking nights.
Your Honor, he follows every car home to make sure that that's where they're going.
I think this is not at all offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, so we know the word.
Did you see any cars that night?
Yes, actually, around 1 a.m. when it was raining very hard, a white Chevrolet Impala came by going around 55 miles per hour. I attempted to stop it, but I got another call on my radio and decided to respond to that call instead.
And what happened once you responded to that call?
Well, as I was responding to the other call, I got a further call that said that there had been an accident on Canyon Road, so I turned around to respond to that call.
And what did you do when you got to the scene of that crash?
Well, I saw the car and I parked in the one in Ben's driveway, and I walked down to the scene, and I saw that there were 3 people there. Vanessa Sullivan was in the passenger seat, and she was motionless. Taylor Hobson was in the back, screaming wildly about something, and Danny Dawson was actually outside of the car, just walking around in circles, mumbling.
Can you further describe that?
Yes, since Danny seemed to be the most coherent, I went up to talk to him, and I noticed that when he started talking to me, he was stumbling and slurring his words a little bit. So I decided to call down the intoxilizer expert as part of protocol and administer some field sobriety tests.
And what is your experience with these field sobriety tests?
Well, I learned how to administer them during my 22-week patrol officer course, and I've been an officer for 10 years, so I've been doing this for a while.
What were some of those tests that you administered to Mr. Dawson?
Well, the first test I administered to Mr. Dawson was to make him say his alphabets backwards from the letter Q.
And how did he do that?
He started off okay, but started stumbling around M&M and didn't know where he was going from there.
Were there any other tests?
Yes, the second test I actually gave him was horizontal gaze and stagnus test.
And what does that test do?
Well, basically for this case, it was when I shine the light into the person who I'm testing's eyes, if their eyes dilate when I take the eyes off and it jerks, that means they've had alcohol into their system.
What was Danny's result?
Danny's eye did show jerking and it showed some dilation, so I assumed that there had been alcohol in the system from that.
Did you perform any other tests that night?
Yes, the final test I performed was the heel-to-toe line test. I made Danny walk in a straight line, heel-to-toe, and he actually failed that one as well.
As a result of all that, what did you do next?
Well, I had already called on the intoxilizer, so I just waited for them to come down and take care of everything. I made sure and looked at all the other people in the scene.
Did you return to the scene of the crash afterwards?
Yeah, actually I returned with the fatal crash team to do my report. I actually brought a drag sled with me and recreated the accident so I could see how everything went.
Can you further explain some of the things you had to do to recreate your report?
Yes, I actually have based all my equations and take all my formulas from the Windsor and Strasser primer, which is a respected source in my field, which Leslie Roman also used for her report. And I used a drag sled to measure how the car had been going.
At this time, I'd like the record to show that I'm showing the building council exhibits P1 and P2. Permission to approach a witness?
Yes, the first one was actually just a picture of Canyon Road, like a diagram of Canyon Road and how the car had driven on it. And the second one is my crash team report that I put together.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to enter in these exhibits as P1 and P2.
Any objections?
No objections at this time, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, after you did all your calculations, what did you find had happened on that night?
Well, I had seen that the car had been going approximately 66 miles per hour when it decided to swerve. And when it swerved, it corrected, and when it hit the tree, it was going approximately 40 miles per hour.
What is a posted speed limit on Canyon Road?
35 miles per hour.
So how much faster was Danny going?
Initially, he was going about 26 miles over.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Officer Foster, footing was bad on the night of the 24th, wasn't it? On the ground.
Where the accident had taken place, yes.
In fact, you slipped yourself, didn't you?
Oh, yes, while I was getting out of my car. It's like...
You mentioned that you used a drag sled in your calculations. A drag sled is of disputed reputability, isn't it?
To some extent, but it's been used reliably by the fatal crash team, and it's been supported by the state in all their trials.
But there's a lot of room for operator error, isn't there?
If the operator has scares, yes.
Officer Foster, you mentioned in your affidavit that if you really thought the driver of Sully 3 should be off the road, you would have pulled the car over, didn't you?
Yes, I did. That was honestly what I had thought until I got that other call on my radio.
It's not that you just didn't want to be out in the rain that night, was it?
No, I was out there on patrol duty anyway, doing my job.
But on patrol, you're in your car, aren't you?
Yes, I am in my car.
And if you pulled them over, you'd have to be standing out in the rain, wouldn't you?
Well, I have to say that I went to another call, and that's why I didn't pull the car over.
There've been a lot of accidents in that area of Canyon Road, haven't there?
Yes, they have.
In fact, the locals have a name for that curve, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
What do they call that, Officer
The
Foster?
death zone.
You mentioned in your testimony a moment ago that Danny seemed the most coherent of the three, didn't you?
He was the one that was standing outside the car. He still wasn't in the car, and he seemed to be walking around. So he seemed the most friendly to approach.
Officer Foster, can I get you to say your alphabet backwards from Q for me, please?
Yes, you could.
Objection, Your Honor. How is this relevant to the case?
If we're implying that Mr. Dawson was drunk based on his inability to say his alphabet from Q to A, then shouldn't we also assume that Officer Foster is drunk because he can't say his alphabet from Q to A?
Officer Foster is not on trial, nor is he drunk at this time. There's no reason why this is relevant to the case.
Miss Sullivan was screaming at Danny during the sobriety test you gave him, wasn't she?
She was there, yes, unfortunately.
And is that standard procedure, Officer Foster?
No, but I haven't called her down there. She was actually there on her own accord. I guess whenever a child dies, a worried parent would come to the scene of the crime to see what had happened.
Yes, they probably would, but I don't think it's proper for them to scream at someone trying to complete a test that might already be made difficult by bad footing, other factors, would they?
I attempted to take the appropriate measures to ensure that Mrs. Sullivan stayed away from Danny Dawson, but I can't do anything for an excited parent getting mad at someone who thinks they killed their daughter.
So what you just told me is that you're an ineffectual police officer, is that right?
No, I'm a police officer who works within the laws that I'm
Nothing further, Officer Foster.
What are you doing this time? I asked the witness to step down.
Prosecution would like to call 7 lines. Unless you want to do.
I'm slowly getting there.
It's really, you're pretty much late. He is.
Please state your name for the court.
Same lines.
And what is your occupation?
Full-time student, part-time cab driver.
And at what company do you work?
AAA cab company over in Leeds.
And where do you usually find your clientele?
Chuggies.
Why Chubby's?
Because Chuggies has a lot of drunk people at night, and I work the night shift.
What is Chubby's?
Chuggies is
Objection.
a bar.
Here's objection.
I was just gonna say speculation, I don't see how he knows that Chuggy's has a lot of drunk people. Does he go in and speak to everyone, taste toxicological, that sort of thing?
He's just a cab driver taking home people who don't feel comfortable driving home themselves and assume their own opinion of the lay witness.
Defense asked that the phrase, "a lot of drunk people," be stricken from the record. We have no problem with any of the rest of the questions.
I feel like at this time, just based on his clientele from Chuggies, he can make the statement that a lot of his clientele from Chuggies are drunk at the time that they use his services. So I'm going to overrule you, but feel free to renew your objection if something else is six.
Mr. Lyons, why do you find most of your clientele at Chubby's?
Well, I'm put on the night shift.
Why are you on the night shift?
Because I'm probably one of the newer cabbies. I mean, at least that's my guess.
Where were you on the night of, or the afternoon of September 4th, 2010?
I was actually at Chuggies getting by to eat a cup of coffee.
Did you see anyone you recognized today?
Danny Dawson was there.
How can you be Dawson?
I took him home a few times over the summer. Whenever he was ready to go home from Chuggies.
Would you say that you and Danny are particular friends?
I wouldn't say we're friends. I'd say I know him pretty well.
Why do you know him pretty well?
He tends to talk a lot on trips where I'm taking him back to wherever he needs to go.
Why do you tend to talk a lot?
Because he tended to be drunk.
Okay. Did you and Danny speak on that afternoon, the afternoon of September 24th?
We had a little bit of an exchange. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. He was already slurring his words and stumbling around, so I asked him if he was going to need a ride home later that night.
And how did he respond?
He looked at me, he said, "No, Dee Dee's going to be the Dee Dee tonight." Walked off.
And how did you interpret his response?
Honestly, I thought he was joking.
Also, while you were there, did you see Danny order any drinks?
I saw